I know, Martin, you always had you prided yourself in good relationships with players. I've spoken to the likes of Hearts and Lennon, Larsson, who tell me what you were like to play for.
I didn't pride myself in it. I felt that if players, first of all, you have to try and get players playing for you for a start.
Yeah.
Number one, that's really important. And you're not going to bring everybody on board. There's going to be dissenters here and there. Generally speaking, two things: either they're not in the side, or they're not actually good enough to be in the side. So they're the dissenters. You keep them down. But overall, you've got. I felt as if I supported the players in many aspects. I don't mean publicly. I don't mean going out and ingratiating myself with them. But in any aspects throughout the football club, I thought that they would play. But essentially, they're playing for themselves.
And you have a little nip at them when you need to, when you felt the need to.
Absolutely.
Because what I'm driving at, pre-match at Craven Cottage, Ten Hag didn't miss Rashford.
Right.
When he said, well, Rashford we knew was ruled out. He wasn't going to be featuring. But that's another thing. But it regards Rashford having a get-together of friends and family on the night they lost 3-0 to Manchester City.
You see,
Ten Hag said, I won't be having that.
Well, that sort of thing would drive you mad as a manager. Absolutely mad. They've just been beaten in a game. They've been pulverised in a football match. And suddenly you're going out to a birthday party. I can't believe it. Like, for instance, when are the players in the Premier League going to realise that every single day is their birthday, so they can have another day, they can have another birthday, they can have another surprise or whatever the case may be. You hide your head in there, and that should be the case. You've been smashed in a game of football, and the first thing you'd want to do is just get home. For me as a manager, for a start, but as a player, I'd never be seen. Imagine Brian Clough coming back after. I tell you what, we got beaten one day. We're European champions, I think. We got beaten at Derby County, which is anathema to him because he used to be at Derby County. And we were well beaten in a game. I tell you what, it took about 5 hours before we left the dressing room, never mind anything else. We were on that bus, and you didn't appear. You didn't appear overnight. You wouldn't even think about going out. You stayed in over the weekend, and then you still had your head in shame by the time that Monday arrived around. Now, and that should be about football. You should be. You're there to do this job. You're there. You're part of a city. Listen, honestly, it's crazy. It is really, really crazy.
It's brilliant. I mean, that is absolutely right. The analysis of Premier League football is it's your birthday every single day is one that I'll subscribe to all the time. And the interesting thing is I made an observation, I have made it repeatedly, about Man United. Certain Man United players don't get it. They don't get what it means to play for Man United. They don't get what the responsibility of playing for Man United involves. They don't get what the history and legacy and expectation of this football club and its fans are. And when you get smashed 3-0 by your rivals, you don't go out to nightclubs. You just don't. As a 26-year-old footballer and as a product of Manchester United, one of the few players that should know that is Marcus Rashford. He should know what Manchester United means and feels and looks like. And irrespective of whether people say, well, you win and lose games, you've got to treat both imposters the same way. Not when you're Manchester United, not when you're playing for a club that's got this level of expectation and scrutiny and media attention, and not when you've had your heads handed to you by your across the city rivals.
But Simon's absolutely right. He should know more than most, what it means. But all players should know what it means to play for Manchester United. All players should know what it's like to play in the Premier League. It's
but there's
everything.
Something also about Ten Hag's messaging. Because I don't know, maybe there's a time gone past and we use Brian Clough as a constant reference point. I don't think there was any subtlety in Brian Clough's points when things weren't the way he wanted. I don't think there was any subtlety or ambiguity about what his expectations of his players were.
Straight to the point.
So why would there be any ambiguity in Marcus Rashford's mind that somehow this is the right look?
Yeah.
I'm sorry that looks and optics are part of our society, but sod the looks and optics of the 21st century. Look at the optics in 1980 or 1979 when Nottingham Forest were European champions. It was still the same thing. You conduct yourself with a degree of expectation, and if you get beaten in a game the way that United are getting beaten at this moment in time, whether it's 1-0 at home to Crystal Palace or 3-0 to Manchester City, the last place you are as a public domain property is out in a nightclub.
Yeah, the only thing I will say about that in defence of Ten Hag, he may not have known about this surprise birthday, and it would have become as a major disappointment.
I'm not talking about the instance. I'm talking about the underlying culture where the player himself realises.
Absolutely.
The player must have known this. So if he didn't know it, then he's stupid and or he's stupid, or the manager's not imparting it.
Is it a fine balance, Martin, as manager?
Or he doesn't care.
Between a strong hand, a firm hand, or giving a bit of leeway?
It depends. It depends greatly. Well, for me, it used to depend on the result, I would have given the players anything just to win the football game, anything at all. I'd forgiven mistakes made during the course of the game. I can think about that on Monday or Tuesday or whatever the case may be. I'd forgiven them anything. But you lose that game, I want the players to feel terrible about it. Really, really badly. I want them to feel it in the dressing room. I want them to feel it when they're going up to meet their families in the little room afterwards. I want them to feel really bad. And then when you've lost a game against your rivals and the team in the city itself, jeez, you shouldn't even have entered your head to be thinking about going out.
So the fact he does, I mean, the fact remains, I think a bunch of Manchester United players still don't really know what Ten Hag stands for. No, you knew what Clough stood for.
Yeah,
that's the point, isn't it, Simon?
That's my point.
You knew what Clough stood for. I asked Brian Clough about you, Martin. Martin's about to manage Celtic in his first Scottish Cup final. Tell me about Martin. He said, I loved Martin, but I did some terrible things to him. That was his opener.
Yes. He said I was arrogant. I was arrogant with nothing to be arrogant about, and he's probably absolutely spot on about that. However, that's immaterial, really. I used to feel as if I played to prove him wrong rather than proving him right. But I played the games. I played the matches. We won the league in 42 games, and I played 38 of them. We went 42 games without being beaten. I played also 38 of them. So I did play the games. I'm obviously disappointed not about the first European Cup final. That aside, but I was privileged. I was privileged to be part of a football club managed by one of the greatest of all time in any consideration.
But did you know that? Let me ask you a question, because we all go on a journey, right? And people mature. But did you know that at the time? Because there were instances where you had a fallout, didn't want to turn up.
Yeah.
So you as a young player, adopt some of the principles that you as an older, wiser man can now look at and go, but were you at the time? Did you have the mindset that you have now at the time?
Right, okay. But I thought it was for the reasons. I didn't turn up for a game eventually. I didn't turn up for a match. To me now, it's like an anathema.
That's my
Absolutely.
Point. Yeah, that's
it
my
is.
point.
Yeah, okay. I didn't turn up for a game, but not for the reasons. The reasons is that I was playing really well, got left out of the side, and I thought to myself, I'm not having this anymore. Yeah. That's the point. I felt it was for the right reasons. Forget about whether it was or wasn't. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, but we knew where we stood with Brian Clough. We knew where we stood. And Brian Clough would have been very much into the point about giving you some extra days if you've won the games as well too. It was about winning football matches, and that's not changed in 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Martin, brilliant. I'm determined to find this interview, which I will attempt to bring to air next week when I spoke to Martin. I spoke to Brian Clough about Martin O'Neill and Forrest and a whole range of things. Honestly, you're going to love it. We're coming up to 12 noon.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.